12 minutes before his body gave out, Adam Holloway had been on Velaran for 4 days when he finally admitted that Terran Voss had been right about the trees. They were not blue. They only looked blue to human eyes because the leaves reflected a narrow band of light from Velaran's pale sun. Terran had explained this twice already. Adam had ignored the explanation twice already. Now he stood beneath a canopy of silver-green leaves inside Aster Vale Biosphere and watched the color shift as he moved his head. "Fine," Adam said. "They're not blue." Terran gave him the patient look of a man who had waited several years for this exact victory. Nessa Voss, walking on Terran's other side, said, "You owe him 3 credits." "I owe him nothing. I said they look blue. I did not sign a legal statement." "You pointed at them and said, 'Those are blue trees.'" That was commentary. That was incorrect commentary. Adam glanced at Terran. "Does she always do this?" "Only when she's awake." Nessa smiled. "And I am usually awake." The 3 of them had met years earlier during a cultural exchange event on Earth. Terran had arrived with a group of Velaran researchers and somehow ended up at a neighborhood festival after a transit delay stranded half the official delegation across the city. Adam had been the man with the radio, the folding tables, and the impossible job of convincing 600 annoyed visitors that a 2-hour delay was part of a perfectly manageable afternoon. Terran had watched Adam turn a missing food delivery, a flooded electrical tent, and an absent speaker into 3 smaller problems instead of one disaster. Adam, in return, had watched Terran calmly learn how human coffee worked and then make the catastrophic decision to drink 3 cups. Neither of them had been especially important that day. That was probably why they became friends. Their friendship had never depended on diplomacy, research, or being representatives of anything larger than themselves. Now, on Velaran, Terran had insisted that Adam see places that did not appear in most off-world travel guides. Aster Vale was one of them. It was not famous. It was not ancient. It had no monument, no battlefield, and no rare artifact. "It is where people go on weekends," Terran had said. Adam had liked that immediately. He spent enough of his working life manufacturing special occasions for other people. Ordinary places told him more. Nessa had joined them that morning with the stated purpose of making sure Terran did not spend the entire visit explaining infrastructure. "He does that," she had told Adam. "I know. He thinks pipes are cultural." "Some pipes are." Terran had looked offended. "All functioning infrastructure is cultural." That argument had carried them halfway through Aster Vale. They were laughing when the floor gave a small, almost polite tremor. It was not enough to throw anyone off balance. Adam barely noticed it at first. What he did notice was the pressure in his ears. A soft inward pull, like the first seconds of an elevator climbing too fast. Then every door in the wide garden corridor sealed at once. The transparent panels along the walls turned amber. Terran stopped walking. Adam looked at him. "That part normal?" Terran's face had changed. "No." A calm voice came from somewhere above them. "Pressure fault detected in adjacent sector. Internal shelter protocol active. Remain within current compartment." Adam turned toward the nearest wall display. A second announcement began. "Metabolic shelter mode in 3 seconds." Terran's eyes widened. "Adam, sit down." "What?" "Sit down now." The air changed before Adam could ask why. There was no visible cloud. No dramatikis. Just a faint mineral smell, clean and dry, followed by something cool at the back of his throat. Terran's knees folded. Adam caught his shoulder, but Terran was heavier than he expected. They both dropped, Adam on one knee, Terran against the floor. Nessa. She had reached for a bench. Her fingers slipped before they closed around it. She lowered sideways, still conscious, still watching him, but with almost no control over her arms. All around the corridor, Velaran visitors were doing the same thing. Some had managed to sit. Some leaned against walls. A woman near a planter had both eyes open and was breathing calmly, but her hands lay useless in her lap. Adam stayed upright. For one strange second, that felt like good news. He gripped Terran beneath one arm and tried to pull him into a better position. Terran's lips moved. Adam leaned close. "You should not still be standing." Adam looked down at himself. "That is a surprisingly rude thing to say after I caught you." Taryn's mouth twitched, but he did not laugh. He barely had enough control to form the words. Adam's guest monitor vibrated against his wrist. The device was standard issue for off-world visitors. He had complained about wearing it on the first day because it made him feel like a package with a tracking label. Taryn had told him that packages were generally easier to replace. Now the screen was bright red. Oxygen, partial pressure, below human safe range. Useful mobility estimate, 12 minutes, 4 seconds. Adam stared at it. What? He felt fine. No, not fine. His fingertips tingled. He flexed them once. The tingling remained. Nessa made a small sound from the floor. Adam kranchit besideher. Can you breathe? Yes. Can you feel your hands? Yes. Can you move them? Her eyes went down toward her right hand. One finger shifted less than a centimeter. Not much. Adam looked around again. Everyone else was breathing. Nobody was panicking in the way he expected frightened people to panic. Their faces were alert. Their bodies were simply refusing to cooperate. His was the only body still acting normal. His wrist said he had 12 minutes. Adam stood. Taryn managed one word. Door. Exactly. He moved toward the nearest sealed exit. Taryn tried again, louder this time. No. Adam glanced back. The corridor door showed a green emergency release icon behind a protective plate. If the automatic system had trapped them inside the wrong compartment, he did not intend to wait for someone outside to notice. He lifted the cover. Adam. Taryn's voice was weak, but sharp enough to stop him. Outside pressure. Adam looked at the display beside the door instead of the release. The first line meant nothing to him. The second did. Outer sector not stabilized. Differential pressure above safe transfer limit. He lowered the cover. Right, he said. That would have been bad. Nessa's mouth moved into the smallest possible smile. Excellent event coordinator. Adam looked at her. She had heard enough about his work on Earth to know exactly where to aim. People at community events rarely decompress if you open the wrong door. Low standards. Very. His monitor buzzed again. Useful mobility estimate. 11 minutes, 27 seconds. Adam Fronit. Less than 40 seconds had passed. Or it felt like less. He looked at Taryn. I lost more than 30 seconds. Taryn's eyes moved toward the bench, telling him to come back. Adam did. That was the first decision he made differently. Instead of trying the next thing that looked useful, he sat on the floor between his two friends and stopped moving. The numbers still fell, but more slowly. Adam watched it for several breaths. 11 minutes, 22 seconds. 11 minutes, 19. 11 minutes, 16. He lifted his wrist. So, this is not a clock. Nessa answered first. No. Taryn drew a careful breath. Shelter mode reduces metabolism. Adam looked at the motionless people around them. The gas. Taryn blinked once. Yes. Adam pointed at himself. Not working. Not on you. That sounds like good news. Nessa's gaze dropped to his monitor. No. The answer was so immediate that Adam almost smiled. Almost. Taryn took another breath. Velaran receptors. Shelter compound binds. Muscles reduce. Heart slows. Oxygen demand falls. Adam looked at Taryn's chest. The movement was shallow but steady. Then he looked at his own hand resting on his knee. His pulse felt too fast. You are all being slowed down. Protected, Nessa said. Adam understood the rest before Taryn explained it. The air in the compartment did not contain enough oxygen for everyone to remain active at normal metabolic rates. Aster Vale had not tried to keep every person operating as if nothing had happened. It had cut demand. The people lying on the floor were not the ones the system had failed. Adam was. Adam looked at his monitor. 11 minutes, 2 seconds. The only person who can walk is the one burning through oxygen fastest. Taryn blinked. Adam leaned his head back against the bench. Of course. NASA. Watched him. You wanted Valera to be interesting. I wanted interesting food. You rejected 6 restaurants. 5. One was a misunderstanding involving live shellfish. Taryn's mouth moved again. This time Adam saw the beginning of a laugh, even if the rest of Taryn's body could not join it. The moment helped. Not because the situation was less serious. Because Adam needed his friends to remain people. Not two bodies on the floor. People. His wrist vibrated once. Not as an alarm, but as an update. 10 minutes, 51 seconds. Adam forced himself not to stand. The public status panel beside them carried a simple graphic of the compartment. Adam could not read every Velaran label, but the color coding was obvious enough. Their section had gone from green to amber. The adjacent one was red. Several narrow passages between them were already sealed. He pointed at a line that pulsed through the diagram. "What is that?" "Remaining atmosphere reserve," Terran said. The line was shrinking. Adam looked around at the motionless visitors again. No one was gasping. No one looked blue, gray, or distressed in any way Adam recognized. Their bodies had simply become economical. The contrast made the situation harder to judge. If everyone had been struggling for air, Adam would have understood the danger immediately. Instead, they looked like people trapped inside bodies that had decided movement was a luxury. He touched 2 fingers to Terran's wrist. The pulse that was slower than Adam had ever felt in another adult. Terran noticed what he was doing. Normal for shelter. That sentence is doing a lot of work. It is supposed to. Adam glanced at Nessa. "And you? Also normal. Good. I would like one normal thing." Nessa moved her eyes toward his wrist. "You have your answer." Adam looked down. 10 minutes, 45 seconds. Not normal. He lowered his arm. Aster Vale's shelter sequence had clearly been designed around the native majority. Adam's guest monitor could warn a human body, but the shelter system itself had no human version of metabolic slowdown. The lights remained soft, the announcements calm. There was no instruction telling an able-bodied occupant to run for equipment because the protocol did not expect one to remain fully active. Adam was not the hero the system had been waiting for. He was an exception the system had never planned to use. That distinction mattered to him. It meant he should stop expecting Aster Vale to tell him what a human was supposed to do next. What has to happen before the air comes back? Terran's eyes shifted toward the wall display near the center of the compartment. Adam followed the look. A diagram showed several segments of the biosphere. Most were sealed. One internal barrier was marked amber instead of green. Isolation Panel 3. Incomplete mechanical lock. Reserved gas restoration. Held. Adam pointed. "That." Terran blinked. Panel did not seat. "Can it be closed from here?" "No." "Why not?" Terran needed several breaths before answering. Motor stopped on resistance. Safety rule. Cannot force unknown obstruction. Adam nodded. That made sense. A machine designed to protect a pressurized habitat should not crush through whatever blocked a barrier just because a computer wanted the door closed. Manual. Local. Of course it is. Nessa looked at him. "Do you complain this much at work?" "I get paid to complain at work." "It is called coordination." Terran's eyes pointed farther down the corridor toward Junction. Adam stood halfway, then stopped. His wrist had already begun falling faster. He sat again. "Before I go anywhere, shortest route or safest route?" Terran's eyes moved to Nessa. Nessa understood. She looked toward the wall map. "There are 2 paths." Adam listed it. "The service gallery is shorter," she said. Her words were slow but clearer than Terran's. "Pressure is lower there." "And the other?" "Visitor loop. Longer. Better atmosphere." Adam glanced at the map. The direct route looked absurdly tempting. Less than half the distance. He could imagine himself crossing it quickly, reaching the isolation panel, fixing the problem, and getting back before the number became frightening. That was how he thought at work. If a stage light failed 10 minutes before a community concert, you did not write a philosophy paper about stage lights. You found the shortest path between the problem and a working replacement. He looked at the monitor again. 10 minutes, 38 seconds. Then at Nessa. "How much worse is the air in the gallery?" She gave him a look that said she knew exactly what he was doing. "Bad enough that you should stop thinking like distance is the only cost." Adam ihalet. Visitor loop. Terran closed his eyes once in approval. Adam stood carefully. This time he did not rush. The hardest part was not the weakness. He was not weak yet. The hardest part was feeling capable. His legs worked. His balance was fine. He could have run. Every instinct said movement was the solution. His wrist said movement was expensive. He stepped into the visitor loop. The visitor loop curved instead of running straight, which made it psychologically worse. Adam could see pieces of the destination through partitions and vegetation, then lose them again behind a wall. At a shallow, reflecting pool, he passed an elderly Velaran couple seated side by side. One of them had managed to keep a hand resting over the others before the shelter response took full effect. Neither could move now. Both watched Adam. He almost said something reassuring. He stopped himself. He had no idea whether reassurance would be honest. Instead, he touched his chest with 2 fingers and pointed toward the isolation panel ahead. The older woman blinked once. Her partner did the same. It was enough. Farther on, a compact maintenance drone sat dormant beneath a wall recess. Adam's first thought was to wake it and send it ahead. His second thought was better. Terran, maintenance drone at Junction 3. Useful. No access to manual lock. Adam kept walking. A few minutes earlier, he might have spent precious time testing it anyway. That difference was small but real. He was no longer treating every available object as a possible solution simply because it existed. The world around him also began to feel subtly less stable. Not visually. Aster Vale remained crisp and bright. The instability was inside him. When Adam turned his head too quickly, the wetland seemed to arrive half a beat late. When he stopped, his body wanted to sway, even though the floor was level. He shortened his steps. He had coordinated outdoor events in summer heat before. He knew the dangerous human habit of negotiating with symptoms. I can get there first. I can rest after this. I only need 1 more minute. Those phrases were useful when the problem was inconvenience. They were stupid when the problem was oxygen. Adam placed one hand on the rail, not because he needed it yet, but because there was no prize for waiting until he did. Nessa's voice came through the earpiece. You stopped. Observant. Why? Because I am becoming wise. That is not measurable. My wrist disagrees. A pause. Then Terran said, You're breathing? Adam checked himself. Faster than I thought. Slow it. Adam did. The monitor's estimate stabilized slightly. He smiled without humor. Apparently the winning strategy is to become extremely boring. Nessa answered, You have trained for years. That one made him laugh, and the laugh immediately cost him. The estimate dropped several seconds faster. Adam shook his head. Fine. No comedy either. Now, it is an emergency, Nessa said. He kept moving, slower than before. Aster Vale had been beautiful 10 minutes earlier, and it was still beautiful now, which somehow made the corridor stranger. Transparent walls curved around a simulated wetland. Silver reeds leaned over black water, while small winged animals drifted between branches beneath a false sky. Nothing inside the habitat understood that the people had stopped moving. Adam walked past a family, seated near the water. A man had one arm around a woman, but the arm had gone slack before the shelter compound finished taking effect. Both were awake. Their eyes followed Adam as he passed. He raised 2 fingers in a small acknowledgement. The man blinked back. Adam kept his pace even. His monitor showed 9 minutes, 56 seconds. He resisted the urge to count steps. Terran. A pause. Then Terran's voice came through Adam's earpiece. Here. 1 instruction at a time. Another pause. Good. Adam smiled despite himself. That sounded personal. Nessa's voice came next. It was. He reached the first junction. The isolation panel was visible through the glass ahead. A heavy segmented barrier had descended from the ceiling and nearly sealed the passage. A narrow dark line remained along one edge. Adam moved faster without thinking. The monitor buzzed. 9 minutes, 21 seconds. He stopped. The number had dropped almost 30 seconds during a burst that lasted nowhere near that long. He stood completely still. His heart was beating harder now. Not dangerously hard, just enough to make the rule obvious. The monitor recalculated. 9 minutes, 19. 9 minutes, 17. Slower. Adam stared through the corridor at the panel. It was close. Standing still while the solution sat in sight felt ridiculous. He stayed still anyway. After 10 control breaths, he continued. Tell me what I am looking for. Terran answered. Lower right housing. Adam crouched beside the panel. There were 2 housings. 2 lower right housings. From your side? That is an excellent question we should have asked before I walked here. Nessa spoke. Outer one has 2 white alignment marks. Adam found them. Got it. Do not pull the lock yet, Terran said. Adam had already put his hand on it. He took his hand away. See? Growth. Terran did not answer. Adam wondered if the silence meant Terran had no energy to waste laughing, or if he had simply decided not to reward him. The panel looked almost closed. A thick mechanical latch had stopped a few centimeters short of its seat. Adam gripped the handle and pulled. Nothing happened. He adjusted his stance and pulled harder. The monitor gave a sharp warning vibration. 8 minutes, 47 seconds. The latch still did not move. Adam released it immediately. No second attempt. That was new too. His first instinct had been to add force. The result had told him force was the wrong answer. Terran, it is not moving. Alignment marks. Adam Leonid Kolosov. 2 white lines had been painted across the joint. They should have formed one continuous stripe. They did not. The lower section was offset. Panel is crooked. Loaded crooked, Terran said. How do I unload it? Support lever. Left side. Adam found a short recess lever. Pull. Push down first. Adam push it. The pressure against the latch changed under his other hand. The heavy barrier shifted half a centimeter. That was enough. The alignment marks met. Now lock. Adam pulled the latch. It seated with one hard metallic click. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then the amber line on the wall display turned green. Isolation panel 3. Locked. Reserve gas restoration. Available. Adam laughed once. It came out weaker than he expected. That is the best green light I've seen all week. Terran's response took a moment. Activate reserve. From here. No. Central station. Adam closed his eyes. Naturally, he stood. His wrist read 7 minutes, 59 seconds. The number should have terrified him. Instead, something else bothered him more. He had solved the largest physical problem. The clock had not rewarded him. It had not climbed back to 12. The oxygen reserve beginning to circulate through the sealed compartment slowed the loss. That was all. What his body had already spent was gone. Adam rested one hand against the wall. For the first time, he stopped thinking about the number as time left. It was capacity left. There was a difference. A large one. Terran. Here. If I move slower, we lose less than if I rush and have nothing left when I get there. Yes. You could have said that 5 minutes ago. I tried. Adam simidit. Then paused. Had Terran tried? He remembered the door. The routes. The panel. He could not remember whether Terran had said those exact words. That bothered him. Adam turned back toward the central chamber. On the way back, Adam passed the same older couple. The woman's eyes followed him to the green status light, now visible at the end of the corridor. Adam lifted his hand and made a small, closed fist gesture that he hoped meant done in any culture. The man's eyes closed briefly. Relief, Adam thought, or fatigue. He could no longer trust himself to assign meaning too quickly. That realization followed him back toward Terran and Nessa. He began checking simple things deliberately. Left turn. Bench. Central display. Terran on the floor. Nessa beside him. Not because he was lost, because he wanted to know whether his mind was still placing the world in the same order twice. At one junction, he almost took the shorter service path on the return trip. He stopped with one foot already turned toward it. He had chosen the visitor loop earlier for a reason. For several seconds, he could not remember the reason. Then it came back. Lower oxygen. Adam stared at the dark service passage. That frightened him more than the number on his wrist. The information had not vanished completely. It had simply become slower to retrieve. He turned away from the service path. Terran. Here. If I ask something you already answered, tell me. A pause. I will. NASA. Already planned to. Of course you did. Adam continued. The central chamber seemed farther away now, even though he knew it was not. He stopped twice. The second time, he sat on the floor instead of merely leaning against a rail. That choice offended some deeply unreasonable part of him. Sitting felt like surrender. Adam looked at the monitor until his breathing settled. The estimate stopped falling so quickly. He remembered hundreds of events on Earth where his job had been to keep people moving. Vendors to the correct entrance. Volunteers to water stations. Performers onto a stage. Guests away from a blocked path. Movement had always meant progress. Aster Vale had reversed the rule. Here, refusing to move could be progress too. Adam stood only when the numbers and his breathing told him the rest had done its job. Then he continued. This time he walked slower from the first step. By the time he returned, the atmosphere had improved enough that the monitor no longer flashed red continuously. It still showed unsafe oxygen for humans. Taryn and Nessa were where he had left them. Nessa's right index finger had moved farther. Adam noticed because she was tapping it against the floor. Once. Pause. Again. He lowered himself beside them. Look at you. Nessa's eyes narrowed. Do not celebrate one finger. I celebrate measurable progress. You coordinate festivals. Exactly. We celebrate everything. She tried to answer quickly. The words came more slowly than her expression. Then celebrate yourself sitting down. Adam started to ask what she meant. Taryn spoke first. You asked again. Adam looked at him. Asked what? The central station. Adam Fronit. Only asked once. Nessa tapped her finger. Twice. Adam looked between them. No one said anything for several seconds. He replayed the last few minutes. He remembered the isolation panel, the white marks, the lever, the click. He remembered asking if the reserve could be activated locally. Had he asked Taryn before that? He could not find the answer. His monitor still showed more than 7 minutes of useful mobility. Adam lifted his wrist. This says I'm still useful. Nessa's gaze stayed on him. It does not say you are still accurate. That sentence landed harder than the warning vibration had. Adam looked at the central display. He could read it. He knew where he was. He could hear both of them clearly. Yet the gap in his memory was real. The danger had changed. It was not only that his legs might fail before the work was done. He might still be standing when his judgment became the least reliable thing in the room. Adam took a slow breath. All right. Taryn watched him. From now on, one instruction. Yes. I repeat it. Yes. Nessa checks whether I actually repeated the same thing and not something creatively similar. Her finger tapped once. Adam nodded. That felt judgmental. It was. He smiled. The smile came late. He noticed that too. Aster Vale's restoration system had begun cycling reserve gas through the compartment. A new line appeared on the central panel. Metabolic shelter stabilized. Transition to active atmosphere requires controlled release. Taryn's breathing had changed slightly. Still slow but deeper. His right hand twitched. Adam saw it. Taryn. Taryn looked down. One finger moved. Then another. The motion was weak but deliberate. For the first time since the shelter compound had entered the air, Taryn lifted part of his hand from the floor. Adam felt relief so sharp it made him dizzy. He sat more firmly instead of standing. Nessa nochisid. Learning. Do not ruin it. Taryn's fingers settled again. Adam pointed at the transition message. What does controlled release mean? Taryn answered in pieces. The shelter compound did two things at once. It suppressed motor activity and drove Velaran metabolism downward. Restoring normal atmosphere was not simply a matter of adding oxygen as fast as possible. Their bodies had to come back up in stages while the compound cleared. Adam kept the explanation short. So your system slowed you down. Now it has to let you speed back up without doing it all at once. Taryn blinked. Yes. Adam looked at himself. And mine never slowed down. Noriceptors. There it was. The final piece. Not immunity. Not resistance. Absence. The shelter compound had a target in Velaran biology. Human biology did not offer the same target. Aster Vale could not place Adam into the protected state because there was nothing for the mechanism to grab. Adam's freedom of movement had never been a sign that he was stronger. He was simply the only person in the room whose body had not been told to conserve itself. The central panel changed again. 2 restoration paths appeared on the local shelter console. Standard controlled restoration. Maintenance bypass. Adam looked at the second option longer than he should have. The maintenance bypass displayed a projected atmospheric curve marked for rapid service recovery. It was fast, very fast. The oxygen level Adam needed could be restored in a fraction of the time. His monitor reacted almost instantly to the projection, recalculating what improved atmosphere would mean for him. For the first time in several minutes, the future number on his wrist looked generous. Adam stared at it, then at Terran. If I use bypass. Terran's eyes moved to the text beneath the option. Not for occupied shelter transition. I gathered that. What happens? Terran needed several breaths. Metabolism rises too fast. Circulation may not adjust evenly. Adam looked at Nessa. She answered the question he had not asked yet. Bad. How bad? Bad enough. He looked at the bypass again. The option was not evil or secret. Aster Vale had a legitimate reason to let maintenance crews restore an empty compartment quickly after testing or service. The label made clear that the bypass assumed the shelter was unoccupied. It made sense under different conditions. Those were not the conditions they were in. Adam pressed standard, controlled restoration. No speech. No pause for approval. He just chose it. The first stage began. Air moved softly through the vents. Adam felt almost no difference. Nessa did. Her fingers curled. Terran's wrist shifted against the floor. A progress indicator advanced. Adam's monitor fell. 6 minutes, 9 seconds. He placed both hands on his knees and stayed seated. The system held at the first stage. Adam hated waiting. That surprised nobody. He watched the indicator as if staring could speed it up. Nessa noticed. You're doing the thing. What thing? Trying to move time with your face. I coordinate events. It works on volunteers. Does it? No. Terran made a faint sound that might have been a laugh. Adam felt a small burst of satisfaction. Then he realized it had taken him a second too long to understand the joke. The second restoration stage became available. Terran instructed Adam to confirm. Adam repeated the instruction. Confirm stage 2. Do not touch bypass. Nessa tapped once. Adam pressed the correct control. The atmosphere rose another step. A few people around the chamber began moving their heads. Someone near the wetland coughed and then took a deeper breath. Nessa rotated her wrist. Terran lifted his hand several centimeters. Adam's vision blurred at the edges. He blinked. The panel sharpened again. He did not mention it. Then he remembered the new rule. I had blur for a second. Nessa looked directly at him. Still. No. Terran said sit. I am sitting. Stay. Adam nodded. Between the second and third stages, the system forced a short hold. Adam could do nothing useful during it. That was almost harder than the walk. He sat with his back against the bench while Terran's fingers slowly recovered. Nessa had managed to turn one hand palm up. For the first time since the failure began, nobody needed Adam to touch anything. He looked through the transparent wall at the wetland. One of the small winged animals landed on a silver reed. Its weight bent the stalk toward the water. A moment later, the reed rose again. Adam had seen the same motion before the emergency and ignored it. Now he watched because watching was one of the few things that cost almost nothing. Terran said, "You are quiet." Adam turned toward him. "Trying something new." Nessa said, "It suits you." Adam wanted to answer immediately. Instead, he let the first joke pass and chose the second thought. How did you know I was repeating myself? Nessa's expression softened slightly. You stopped reacting to the answer. Adam weitet. The first time Terran told you where the control was, you complained. The second time, you asked like you had never heard it. That bothered Adam because it was exactly the sort of detail he usually noticed in other people. At work, he could tell when a volunteer was overwhelmed long before they admitted it. He watched posture, repetition, the way a person stopped making small decisions. Now Nessa was doing that for him. Thank you, he said. She blinked. Adam simidit. Do not make it strange. I was going to say you are welcome. Too late. Terran's hand shifted another centimeter. The hold indicator finally cleared. Adam did not move until Terran told him the next stage was ready. That, more than any number on the monitor, showed how much had changed. The third stage required a physical confirmation at the central control. That had always been part of the design. Aster Vale would not advance an occupied shelter transition without someone present to confirm that the occupants were recovering as expected. Adam could reach it from where he sat if he moved closer. He waited for Terran's instruction. Terran gave it. Adam repeated it. Nessa confirmed. Only then did he move. The process was becoming slower, and that was the point. Not because the machine was difficult, but because Adam was becoming less trustworthy and the group was adapting around that fact. Stage 3 began. Terran managed to bend his elbow. Nessa pushed one palm against the floor. Adam watched them gain back pieces of themselves. At the same time, his own body was quietly taking pieces away. His hands were clumsier. He flexed them. The tingling had spread into his palms. He could still grip and stand if necessary. But he no longer trusted the phrase "still can" the way he had earlier. Time itself had begun to feel unreliable. He checked his monitor. For minutes, 48 seconds. He was sure it had shown more than 5 only moments ago. Had it? He looked away. The number mattered less than the pattern. The final restoration stage appeared. Adam shifted closer to the control. There were 2 confirmation fields, one above the other. He knew which one he needed. He had been looking at the same interface for several minutes. He reached toward the upper field. Stopped. Both fields looked familiar. He pulled his hand back. Terran watched him. Adam Leonid Kulusov. The labels were clear. He could read each word. Yet when he moved his eyes from the label to the touch surface, certainty slipped away. Upper. Lower. He knew. Then he did not know. The Adam who had entered Aster Vale would have pressed one. He had spent years keeping public events alive with incomplete information, missing deliveries, late performers, bad weather, and electrical systems that always seemed to fail just before doors opened. At work, hesitation could create a new problem. You chose, adjusted, and kept moving. Adam kept his hand still. Terran raised his head slightly. I'm not sure I am reading this right. The words were harder to say than Adam expected. Not because Terran would judge him, but because Adam could still move and his hands still worked. Admitting that somebody else should decide felt absurd while he was physically the most capable person in the compartment. Terran looked at the panel from a floor. His angle was different. His eyesight was clear. His thinking was not being starved the way Adam's was. Terran lifted one shaking hand. He pointed. Lower. Adam looked. Lower field. Yes. Adam did not touch it. NASA. She had pushed herself partly upright against the bench. Her movements were slow and weak, but she could turn her head freely now. She followed Terran's finger. Lower. Adam repeated it. Lower field. Final controlled restoration. NASA nodded. Adam pressed it. The panel chimed. Final restoration accepted. Automatic sequence active. For a second, nobody moved. Then the vents deepened their flow. The pressure in Adam's ears changed again, this time outward. The oxygen warning on his wrist shifted from red to amber. He watched Terran place his palm flat on the floor. Terran pushed. His shoulder rose. Nessa pulled one knee beneath herself. Around the chamber, other Velarans began moving arms and hands. Slow, uncertain movements, but their own. Adam laughed once. It came out as little more than air. Nessa looked at him. Seat. I am sitting. You are leaning. That is a technical distinction. His voice sounded wrong to him. Too distant. He lowered himself fully to the floor. The monitor showed 3 minutes, but the projection had improved sharply as the atmosphere recovered. It no longer mattered. The system had accepted the final stage. No more human action was required. That mattered more than the number on his wrist. Adam looked at Terran. You good? Terran was still on one hand and one knee. No, Adam nodded. Me neither. Nessa managed something close to a smile. Excellent team. Adam wanted to answer. He had a response. Something about community events. Something about refunds. It was funny in his head. He could not find the words. That was the last thing he noticed before the room folded quietly into darkness. When Adam opened his eyes again, the ceiling was white. Not Aster Vale white. Medical white. He knew that before he knew where his arms were. A soft sensor rested against his finger. A transparent line ran from a small hydration pack to his wrist. He turned his head. Taryn was sitting in a chair beside the bed. Actually sitting. Upright. Moving. Adam stared at him for a long second. Taryn raised both hands. Look, too. Adam closed his eyes. Show off. His voice sounded rough, but the joke arrived on time. That felt important. Nessa was standing near the foot of the bed with her arms folded. How many fingers? She raised 3. Adam suintet. 7. Disappointing. 3. She lowered her hand. Better. Adam looked from her to Taryn. You both all right? Taryn nodded. Temporary weakness. No lasting problem expected. Adam breathed out. A doctor entered a moment later, checked the monitors, and asked Adam a few simple questions. His name, where he was, what world he was on. Adam answered all of them. Then he asked the only question he still cared about. Was the wrist monitor right? The doctor glanced at the device on the bedside table. Yes. I did not have 12 minutes. You had an estimated 12 minutes of useful mobility at your activity level when shelter mode began. That sounds like a very careful way of saying yes. It is a careful measurement. Adam looked at Taryn. He likes you. The doctor ignored that. The estimate was not a death timer. It predicted when oxygen limitation would begin, making sustained movement and reliable task performance unsafe. Adam remembered the 2 fields on the panel. Upper, lower. He remembered not knowing. So Nessa was right. My judgment was going before my legs. That can happen. Adam nodded. In the shelter compound, the doctor pulled a stool closer. The compound works through receptor families common to native Velaran biology. Those receptors participate in the metabolic shelter response. Humans do not have compatible receptors. So I was immune. No, the answer was immediate. Adam smiled slightly. Everyone has been very committed to correcting me this week. You are unaffected by one mechanism. That is not the same as being protected from the environment. The doctor pointed toward Adam's monitor. The Valarans around you had their oxygen demand reduced. Yours remained comparatively high. Your ability to move was the result of not entering the protective state. Adam looked at Taryn. The people on the floor were safer than I was. Yes. And running would have made it worse. Yes. Standing still helped. Yes. Adam fronit. I dislike this medical philosophy. It is physiology. That is worse. Nessa made a quiet laugh. The doctor continued. Your later choices mattered. You stopped wasting effort, and the atmosphere improved after the isolation barrier closed. Together, those things extended the period in which you could function effectively. Adam shook his head. So I did not outlast the system. No, I just stopped wasting what I had. The doctor considered that. That is a reasonable description. After the doctor left, Adam lay back against the pillow. For a while, none of them spoke. The silence did not feel empty. Taryn broke it first. If you had not been able to move, we could not have closed the barrier. Adam looked at him. If you had not been able to tell me what to do, I would have spent my 12 minutes opening the wrong door and pulling the wrong lever. You stopped. Eventually, Nessa unfolded her arms. After being told, leadership is knowing when to listen. That is not what you said 4 days ago. I have developed. She shook her head. Adam looked at Taryn. You pointed at the correct field. Taryn lifted his right hand. One useful hand. Very useful hand, Nessa said, and I confirmed. Adam turned toward her. Very useful, sister. Better. He stayed in the medical unit another hour. By the time they were released, Adam could stand without dizziness. Taryn was moving normally again, though a little stiff. Nessa claimed she was completely recovered and then nearly walked into a chair because her balance had not fully agreed. Adam did not mention it. He wanted to. That was different. They reached the exit from the medical wing. The corridor beyond led back toward the visitor transport. Adam stepped through first by habit. One step. Then he heard Taryn stop behind him. Adam turned. Taryn was testing his footing before leaving the support rail. Nessa waited beside him. Adam could have walked back and offered an arm. He did not. Taryn did not need rescuing. Adam simply stopped where he was. A few seconds later, Taryn let go of the rail. He took one careful step, then another. Nessa joined him. The 3 of them moved down the corridor together. Above the windows, Valera's pale sunlight touched the leaves outside Aster Vale. They looked blue again. Adam decided not to argue with them. Sometimes the most useful thing we can do is not move faster, but recognize when someone else sees what we no longer can. Adam walked into Aster Vale, believing action was always better than waiting. He left knowing that trust can be a form of action too. If this story left you thinking about what you would have done in Adam's place, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed the journey, consider liking the video, sharing it with someone who might enjoy it, and subscribing for more science fiction mysteries. Until next time, take care, and keep looking twice at the things that seem obvious.